Joseph here with your weekly dose of practice test medicine. I'm excited to bring this test question to you because, well, I found the question in the docs. So we'll talk about where I found that earlier, the inspiration for this question. But it's about the basics. It's easy to think as we advance in our careers and our knowledge that basics are for junior developers, and as we've skyrocketed past that point, basics no longer matter to us. That's fundamentally incorrect. In fact, as you hear me say on a regular basis, think like a junior developer. Approach problems like a junior developer. They solve problems too. Just because they haven't been working in the system for, say, more than 6 months or a year, whatever, does not mean that they don't have good advice. They are people, they're problem solvers too. And that's where this basics come in really handy. So, in other words, don't forget the basics. Now, it's funny. We're going to be talking through the documentation. We're going to be looking at code as well today, but it was actually the documentation here on the Adobe website that gave me the inspiration for this practice test question. So, without further ado, my friends, let's jump in. You are reviewing a UI component as you need to change a template. You come across this line in the define statement. All right, we have some code here. Thanks to your PHP Storm acumen, you located the file at this path. But the burning question in your mind is, how does this file path actually resolve? This is going to be an interesting one. Well, good news is most of you got this answer correct, but let's still review the answer and why I chose the one that I chose is to be the correct one. All right, so the path config the path config and require JS config maps to UI template, Magento UI templates. Magento uses the module name as a shortcut. Magento UI maps to UI. The map attribute in require JS config converts this file from the defined path to the actual path. All right, so if you're not a front-end developer, some of this can seem maybe just a little bit less than intuitive. But a lot of this comes back to not only understanding Magento front-end development, but how does this tie into the libraries that Magento uses? So Magento heavily uses require.js, and to be really frank, it kind of sits on the back burner. Nobody sees it or thinks about it that much. Now, what we do see and think about is Knockout, and I hope that all of you don't just read the Magento docs on Knockout, but that you actually read the Knockout.js documentation as well. So let's work through each one of these, and the easiest solution might be just to jump over into the Magento docs, which I think let's do at this point. So here we are on the Adobe website. I'm still old school. I still call it Magento. And we see require JS in commerce. This is a very powerful, very helpful read just to walk through. Just take it line by line, walk through what this is. And you'll notice as you do this that this maps very closely to require.js. I mean, it's the same thing. So what we're doing here, and actually let me back up. What gave me the source of inspiration for this was reading this statement right here. You'll notice it literally borrows some of the exact same paths because, again, that's what I thought it'd be hopefully a little more familiar as opposed to just coming up with paths on my own. The idea here is that the path is a replacement feature. So we're talking about this first one here. The path is a replacement feature. So when we specify in the code something like UI/template, require.js says, basically looks through these list of paths and says, oh, I have a match here, I'm going to replace it. I have a match here, I'm going to replace it. That's basically what happens. We have look for this, apply this. So we can do this at pretty much any level. However, if we're doing this on a file-by-file basis, it's much better to do it in a system like this. So we can just alias it around and move it that way. The paths directive can be a little bit more dangerous, and based off of what I read in the documentation, it's best used for more global changes, although there's nothing prohibiting you from using on a line by line basis. So, with this all said, I don't see any reason why A would not just be the correct answer. Now, we do have a couple of other options, and I'm going to just show you right now that A is this option that we only look. I only have 3 options. Like, how many choices can I? It's kind of hard. Like, you can only mix it up so much. And in fact, I kind of wondered if there's a bit of a pattern that's developed. Anyways, B, Magento uses the module name as a shortcut. Magento UI maps to UI. Now, there's just nothing in there that system that does that. And then C, the map attribute in required JS config converts this file from the defined path to the actual path. Now, there is a maps. Might be best to come over here into, let's see here, the map. And now it's, the map attribute. This does work, but not in the context that this was discussed. So all that to say, take a few minutes and read the documentation that I'm going to drop in the link in the comments below. This documentation is absolutely critical to you becoming a successful front-end developer. We've been talking about a lot of checkout stuff lately, and kind of as we switch gears into somewhat front-end, but still checkout, very much checkout related. This stuff makes a difference on the test as you take it. So do yourself a favor, review the documentation, even if you don't have a test coming up on the line. Make sure that you understand those basics better than anyone else on your team, and you will continue to be a great developer.